Close rates. How in the world are close rates so hard to explain? Why are there different variations? Why does your Pink Scout close rate not match your HubSpot or your Pipedrive or your Google Sheet close rate? I'm going to dive into everything that makes up close rates and explain why close rate calculations, while on one hand seems very simple and it should not be hard to calculate, can be very confusing when you're looking at close rates from different systems. So this is a conversation that I had with a client, and at the end of this I was like, you know what, this is the best quick explanation, and we're looking at some actual sales data, and it explains very succinctly the core problems that you have when you are calculating a close rate. And specifically, I would say we're going to dive into 3 versions of how to calculate close rate, and it's all based on date fields inside of the objects that you're using to calculate the close rates. So for example, we have creation date, we have estimate date, and we have close date. And when you are calculating close rate, you have to be very intentional about which of those date fields you are going to use in the numerator and which of those fields you're going to use in the denominator. Have you ever heard those words in a while? Numerator, denominator? I feel like the last time I've used that was back in, I don't even know, geometry or something in high school. But numerator and denominator are the 2 things that are needed to calculate a close rate, and we need to be very intentional about which date field is feeding into each one of those. And then lastly, what are the pros and cons of using close rate based on creation date, a close rate based on estimate date, or a close rate based on close date, or maybe even a 4th, using an estimate date in the denominator and a close date in the numerator. So we're going to talk about all that in this video. Let's dive into this conversation with Will from Mike's Quality Painting.
I did do some research and on HubSpot, and there's a lot of people, I guess, similarly to me, right, that are in like these sales manager positions. Do you know why, or is there anything you can think of that gives just the rate, like a regular close rate? Can I set up parameters that says, this is how many bids they took, this is how many they won this month? Sounds like there was I found a whole thread on it where people were just complaining.
Oh yeah. It's probably one of the biggest. I mean, I'm literally like blown away that they can't come up with a better solution. So short answer is I've heard rumors that they're working on something and it may be out at some point in the future. The challenge, or just context for why that's actually slightly harder than at first glance it seems, is because people, like, in order to calculate a close rate, you have to clarify what deals get included and what deals get excluded in the calculation to begin with. It's just one deals over total deals, but are you going to say the total deals don't include walkaways and like all the loss reasons and things like that we don't want to include? But also you have to pick a date field that you're going to do it on. So like if you are to say, we want to do it based on deal create date, for example, that would be all the deals the day they were created, which oftentimes is the day that they called the business, not the day that the estimate happened. So then you could say, okay, well, let's do it on the day of the estimate. But if you do the day of the estimate, then that, like, I could estimate a job this month and then win it 2 months from now. And all of a sudden my close rate from September is being affected by stuff that happened in November. Right. So that's also not great. Then you can do it based on close date, and which is closer to, I think, what would be ideal. But then, like, what are you doing about the deals that stay open for 3, 4, 5 months because estimators aren't marking it as lost? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, long story short, what I have found is really challenging about that. And that's why I was actually looking, it doesn't look like you haven't embedded this in your dashboard, which we could do fairly easily. There's the sales and marketing budget. Did you know you can embed Google Sheets into HubSpot dashboards?
I have seen that.
So for example, this calculation here, closing rate, which is what we're talking about, this is actually being calculated from number of sales divided by SQLs, but sales is taking the close date and SQLs is taking the estimate date. So in order for us to calculate your close rate here, we're actually looking in the numerator, we're taking the close date of one deals and dividing it by the denominator, which is the estimate date of the same time frame. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's actually like the math and creating a data set to do that requires basically making a data set or rules around what the numerator is, and then dividing it by the rules of what you're saying the denominator is. So that's the hard part about getting a number this simple of just like, well, what's our close rate? Is that everybody defines close rate slightly different. And that's also why I found that Paint Scout can be very confusing to people, because Paint Scout gives you a close rate, but they're not explaining the math that they're using to get the close rate. And so your close rate in their system, I believe, is based on estimate date. So if you close a job 4 months later, your close rate historically is changed in the month that you estimated that job.
Right.
And
So
this is the only way to show a close rate that's static in time, that never changes, because I know that the numerator is when I close the deal, and the denominator is when I estimated, and those two things are locked in time forever.
Yeah. So, and that's been the challenge. So I finally got the team around to, I basically put the kibosh on Paint Scout. I said, like, I don't, like, it doesn't matter, like, whatever number that's showing, like, we're committed to getting this information from HubSpot. And so I ended up deriving those two questions. So there's, like, right now I'm manually calculating what somebody's closing at, right? With your original example of okay, so if they win a job that they estimated in January, but they win it in April or whatever, right? That goes towards their sales in that month. And so, but it's only getting compared to the estimates that they've been provided in the current month. And so that's sort of like the traditional right way of close rate. But then I do a secondary one, and it's only applied by this month. So the deals you've been given this month versus what you've won this month, that you've won from this month. And those two numbers can vary somewhat drastically, right? So like in September, I gave you 20 leads, you closed 8 of those leads, but you happen to close 5 other deals from other months. That really shows, but it doesn't do much to really indicate, okay, how are we closing in this month? So those are my two big things, is just because I'm manually doing it. And so if there was
I would say this is my suggestion there. I would say go to Actions, and I'm doing it right now, so you don't have to. Add external content, Google Sheet, call this detailed sales data. And we can put this on the estimators as well, like on their dashboard. But this is the simple solution that we've created for everybody else. And it's just, you now have a Google Sheet, and we can move this up if this is more valuable than other things you have on here. But now we can have on here those close rate numbers, and you just tell them that when we're talking about close rate, this is what we mean by it, and this is how it's defined. And then it just takes some education, in my opinion, on the logistics and the like why it's confusing sometimes, and the different ways of calculating close rate and what that means and all that stuff. And so because I think you just said, which I completely agree with, it's not that this is the right way to do it and everything else is wrong. It really comes down to understanding the numbers that you are looking at, and understand the different variations of that number you could pull. Because this way, this close rate with close date in the numerator, estimate date in the denominator, like you said, I might only give you 10 estimates this month, but theoretically you could close 12 because you actually started following up with people and you won deals from a previous month in addition to winning those deals. Like, that is a reality that could happen. It's rare, but you could have a huge swing in close rate because you actually started following up. So I feel like this method of calculation the strength of it is it shows changes to sales reps, sales behaviors instantaneously. So if all of a sudden my close rate drops in this method of calculating it, I could deduce that the sales rep probably isn't calling his leads back this month where he was before, because he only closed 20% quantity of estimates that he ran. But in the next month, he could change his behaviors and all of a sudden go up to 60%, right? I just want to interrupt to say, if this type of thing is like, oh my gosh, this is what we've been talking about, I needed to show this to someone on my team, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We love working with painting contractors. We use HubSpot, Paint Scout, Airtable, all the common tools. I mean, there's a bunch of other CRMs as well, but those are the ones that I'm a big fan of. We also understand data in your business super, super well. So if you want to chat more, find the link down below. But let's keep this conversation going with Will. The other one you could do is just like when you look at create date, which I think is probably the least common. But if you are looking at estimate or close rate with the creation date of the deal in both numerator and denominator, that's a really interesting one to look at the quality of marketing leads at different times of the year. So like if you want to look at what's our close rate on all deals that were created in January, regardless of when we close them, what is it? And compare that to what's our close rate of deals that we created in June. You're going to find that that number also varies when you look at it like, months in the past, because you need to give it time for things to close. And that also is different than looking at estimate date in both, where you're like, let's just look at estimates that we ran in May and that's it. So if you ran an estimate in May and you closed it in August, we can still look at how are you performing as a sales rep in your sales presentations in May. You know what I'm saying? So there's value to each method. And I just think that the reason why most people would go with this one, the one that you have here, is because you don't want your historical close rates to be changing. And this is the way that you avoid it. But the other methods of calculating it are not wrong. They just show different things or are indicators for different behaviors. Whereas this is like at the end of April, you closed a certain number of deals this month and you estimated a certain number of deals this month, and that's a fact. But if we're doing it based on you estimated 15 deals this month, I wonder how many of those you're going to close in the next 3 months. That's like, it's all over the place. You know what I'm saying? And then the other thing, lastly, because I could go, I've gone on and on about this for so many different companies. The other thing is that keep in mind that regardless of the method that you use to calculate close rate, if we looked at close rate data from 2023, every method of calculating your close rate is going to be the same. Like in an extended look back, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because you've given time for everything to settle. And so if I just look at my close rate for the year in 23, based on the first method, the second method, or the third method, you're going to end up with nearly identical close rates across the board. It's just the variation of them from month to month will change based on which method you're using.
All right. Well, I'll have to see. I'm going to try to use these and then we'll see how they react. I might also try to find this section of this video because I know the Fireflies thing sends it out, right? And it's certainly one thing to understand, right? Like, I guess when you're telling people, right, or whenever I'm trying to break it down with them on the sales team, like, hey, this is how you're performing based off of like total won deals. But if I'm just looking at, okay, that could be 50% or 43% or whatever that number is, looking at it based on like total open deals versus what I'm closing, whether it be from a month ago or 2 months ago or however long, versus like wanting to see like the answer that you want to get out of it determines like which kind of data set you're using, and it's really derived by the date, and what activity. So, explaining that to them is
I think that's the key. Just all data, no matter what, all data can be crafted or manipulated in a way to tell whatever story you're wanting to tell. But the better you understand the data, the better you can look at it and be like, this is interesting. what is this telling us and what is it not telling us? And don't try to extract meaning from something that was not created for that purpose. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if every metric is, it's just for like we just explained, there's 3 different ways of doing it. And I think they're all interesting to look at, but most people are just overwhelmed and they just want to know what their close rate was. And then as soon as you get into it and you're like, okay, we'll tell you your close rate. How do you want to calculate it? And then I'll give you the number, because you can't just say, well, how many deals did I close last month? It's like, okay, what are we just talking about, the ones that you closed or the ones you estimated? And they might be like, well, both. Well, that's a 4th way of doing it, because now we have to look at only estimates this month and only deals this month that closed. Anyways, it's just like,
Yeah.
once they map out, like, let's break down what a close rate is. It's deals won divided by deals estimated. Got it. So then how are we going to qualify, of all the deals that you estimate, which ones are going to be included in the time frame that we're looking at?
Yeah,
and that's
which
the
ones
part that people don't take the time to think. And then once you do, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes perfect sense, Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was valuable. This is such a exciting, like, I nerd out about stuff like this. I love talking about data when it comes to reporting and analytics and all this stuff. And really understanding the framework for these things is critical to being able to do reporting correct, and more importantly, have the people that are looking at those reports in your business understand what it is they're looking at. So hopefully you enjoyed this. We'll see you in the next video.